Landorus, Zapdos, Tyranitar. When you think of who might be the GOAT of competitive Pokemon singles, those are some of the candidates that might come to mind right away. But what if I told you that there is one Pokemon that so perfectly encapsulates what it means to be strong that it has found itself in the overused tier without fail for over 20 years? Well, kind of. Let me explain. Blissey and Chansey have been in a kind of arms race ever since their introductions into the game, Chansey in Gen 1 and Blissey in Gen 2. Both Pokemon, of course, being from the same evolution line, have always basically done the same thing. Huge HP stat, huge special defense stat, but physically speaking, well, let's just say the egg resemblance isn't cosmetic. Blissey, of course, is statistically superior, being Chansey's evolution, but that hasn't always been the end of the world. Two Pokemon in the same line being competitively viable is not a new thing, with the best example being Porygon 2 and Porygon Z, one Pokemon being a master of defense and one a master of offense. These Pokemon have each had moments where one is better than the other, or where both even coexist within the same tier. But there's just one problem. Blissey and Chansey are basically the same thing, and because of the way Smogon usage-based tiering works, the one that is slightly better in that specific metagame sucks up all the usage, leaving the other useless on OU but usually too strong for underused, left to rot in the limbo that is the UU ban list. So, like the video and join me as I explore the greatest rivalry in competitive Pokemon history to see who is the stronger sister. Generation 1, of course, gives us a lead for Chansey as Blissey doesn't exist. That's not to say that it isn't worth talking about though, because if there was a way to make a name for yourself with that head start, Chansey certainly does so, as alongside Snorlax and Tauros, it makes up 1/3 of the RBY triumvirate that appear on almost 100% of teams. Because of Gen 1's unique merge special stat, Chansey can take advantage of a quite impressive 105 special attack stat to fire off a powerful Bolt Beam combo, but its core traits are so good that it can take advantage of a wide variety of moves, including Seismic Toss, Reflect, Counter, Thunder Wave, and Sing, with the only constant of course being Soft Boiled. The normal typing is also highly beneficial for Chansey as, due to a coding shortcut to prevent fire moves from burning fire types, ice from freezing ice, electric from paralyzing electric, secondary effects from normal type moves, particularly the common Body Slam, are useless against Chansey, which is another reason why it, Snorlax, and Tauros are so strong. However, tragedy would strike for Chansey in Generation 2, with Blissey finally arriving at the scene. While Blissey doesn't get to take advantage of a powerful special attacking stat, as well as being overshadowed by the king of Gen 2, Snorlax, Blissey's simply superior stats knock Chansey off its throne and into irrelevancy, with Blissey filling much of the same role, albeit a more defensive one, as Chansey did in Gen 1. Using options again like Counter, Soft Boiled, Ice Beam, and Thunder Wave, Blissey has a few new tools to play with, such as Heal Bell, the altered Toxic mechanics, and Flamethrower to counter the all-new Steel type. Sometimes it uses Present as well, a move so buggy and poorly implemented that I might make a whole video about it, but all you need to know now is that sometimes it does a lot of damage. In Gen 3, the same trend would continue, with Blissey arguably being the best Pokemon in the entire metagame, thanks to its new ability, Natural Cure, and the popularity of more offensive Calm Mind variants. One key detail of Blissey in these early generations is that the physical special split had not yet occurred, meaning that Blissey isn't just to counter special attackers, but it counters half the types in the game. Water, Ice, Fire, Electric. It didn't matter what Pokemon you had, Blissey countered all of them. This leads to funny interactions where Blissey, with its whopping 10 defense, can stay in on a Gyarados and threaten a KO with Thunderbolt. In DPP, this would finally end, and the introduction of Clefable would eventually overshadow Blissey on balance, but it would still find itself as an integral defensive piece of Big Stole and a great user of the new Stealth Rock, especially alongside its BFF from all the way back in Gen 2, Skarmory. However, even though all hope seems lost for Chansey at this point, with Black and White would come the miracle it needed. The Eviolite. Eviolite is an item that multiplies the defense and special defense of an unevolved Pokemon by 1.5 times. This might not sound like a huge deal when you remember Chansey has a defense stat of 5 and Blissey has one of 10, But due to a mathematical quirk in how stats work in Pokemon, a Violate isn't multiplying the base stat, but rather the final level 100 stat including all of Chansey's EVs, IVs, and nature. This makes the final defense stats of a Violate 178 versus 130 physically, and 370 versus 308 specially. Even with Blissey's superior HP, this makes Chansey much bulkier in practice. However, at the cost of leftovers, which are a big deal in a generation of permanent sand, Gen 5 would be the first and last time these two pink blobs would meet, receiving the same amount of usage in the most recent season of the Smogon Premier League. But, as the Weather Wars ended in Gen 6, this would all change, and we would enter the era of Chansey, the defensive queen of Overused. Its iconic set of Soft-Boiled, Seismic Toss, Toxic, and either Heal Bell or Stealth Rock would become defined here, with Blissey being relegated to a niche Manaphy counter with Calm Mind. The same would continue in Generation 7, with Chansey shaping the metagame around it as the foundational element of stole and defensive strategies within the format, and Blissey would slip even further into irrelevancy. But, once more, a new item would arrive to change this war. Enter Heavy Duty Boots, also known as the Tims. This controversial and powerful item makes the wearer completely immune to hazard damage, which, as metagames grow more offensive and hazard stack grows stronger, would completely shift the way Pokemon is played. The combination of Stealth Rock and Spikes meant that a clever opponent could utilize double switching by going to a physical attacker while a special attacker forces in Chansey, with each time Chansey losing around a quarter of its health. This is simply not sustainable defensively, and if your defog is sabotaged by something like Taunt, defensive Pokemon without boots, other than Clefable of course, just get whittled down. This meant that Blissey would overtake Chansey, as despite its inferior bulk, not needing an Violite allows it to completely bypass the hazard metagame, letting it take advantage of the new pivoting move Teleport to become a terrifying, momentum-generating special wall in the metagame. These days, the same is even worse in Scarlet and Violet. Chansey has fallen down all the way to RU, and boots have become even more important in the era of Gold and Go. Blissey still finds itself as the foundational piece of Stole, alongside its new best friend Dondozo, and is now most commonly seen with a defensive Calm mindset to stop Special Sweepers and Terra Dark to counter Stored Power and Psyshock users, though sometimes it'll run Terra Water for Specs Walking Wake on Sun. So, how does this leave our final tally? If we give Chansey 1, 6, 7, and 8, Blissey 2, 3, and 4, and 9, and call Gen 5 a tie, both are actually tied with 4.5 generations of OU relevance. So, who's better? Well, looking ahead to the future and considering Chansey's head start, I think it would be fair to give the crown to Blissey, but you could easily argue that Chansey is much more viable and impactful than Blissey in their respective generations, with Chansey really defining Gens 1, 6, and 7 in a way that Blissey only really defined Gen 3. It's sad that these two pink blobs have been locked in such a fierce battle for so long when, as a combined force, they're easily the most relevant and iconic Pokemon in competitive singles. But unless something changes drastically in the future, it looks like Blissey will finally stand alone. At least Chansey's still better than Happiny though.